displaying the glory of God's creation by exploring America one park at a time. Welcome to Parking Full Time with Big Dave, the parks professor. First hole. The par and distance are at the top of the screen. This hole plays slightly downhill, but it's very open. And even at this length, with two pretty good throws, you should be able to set up a birdie opportunity. This is really a pretty easy hole if you have a big enough arm to take advantage of it. I want to welcome you back to Parking Full Time. I am Big Dave, the parks professor. We are at Athens Regional Park. We are in Athens, Tennessee, and therefore we're about midway between Knoxville and Chattanooga. Let me use the length of this hole to say a word about the tees and the baskets. Each hole has two tees. There's a sign with a gray pole that marks the back tee, and a sign with a blue pole that marks the front tee. Likewise, every hole on this course has two baskets. There's a red short basket and a yellow long basket. And that combination of tees and baskets is the reason for the range of distances at the top of the screen. Also, the multiple tees and multiple baskets gives this course a high replayability and high adaptability to your skill level. There's the first basket, and there's the view back to the tee from behind the basket. The second hole plays the opposite direction as the first hole, and therefore it plays slightly back uphill. But really, it's in a similar spirit to the first hole. It's very open, there's not a single obstacle on this hole. And if you have a big enough arm, it should be a pretty easy birdie opportunity. To finish my thought on the tees and baskets, all of these video clips start at the back tee and go to the long basket. So we will see the full distance on every hole. In particular, we'll see all 445 feet of this hole. I captured this video on Thursday, March the 6th, and it was a pleasant afternoon with temperatures in the upper 50s when I came here. In spite of the nice weather, I did not see any other players on the disc golf course, but I did see some other walkers on the various trails in the park, and we will see some of those trails on this course in the near future. There's the second basket. And there's the view back downhill to the tee from behind the basket. The third hole is the first really interesting hole on this course. You throw directly across the front tee, which is what we're walking across right now. Also, there's a stream off to the right, and points on and across that stream are out of bounds. Off to the left, you see this large tree, and that's the first of an entire row of trees down the left-hand side. That large tree really pinches the fairway, and there are also some low-hanging branches that make for a low ceiling. The conventional route would be to go the route that we're walking, and that is to try to get your disc through that pinch in the fairway. Alternatively, you could play out to the left and hope you get a good ricochet or a good bounce through the row of trees off to the left. This is a very interesting hole, and this is actually one of my favorite holes on this course. There's the third basket and the view back to the tee. The fourth hole is across the stream from the third hole, and it plays in the opposite direction, but really it's more in the spirit of the first two holes. It's pretty open with just a couple of trees on either side of a wide fairway. It's very flat. And if you have a big enough arm, a couple of good throws should set up a birdie opportunity. As a hint of what's to come, I hope you've made a couple of birdies on these first few holes. These first few holes are all pretty open and pretty short for a par 4 holes. Starting with the next hole, the difficulty is going to pick up quite a bit. I'll use the length of this hole as an opportunity to thank you for watching. Parking Full Time would not be anything without the people who watch. I realize that every day, and I thank you every day. Also, I do not make any monetary compensation for anything I do for this project, and therefore all I get for making these videos and writing these course reviews are your likes, your subscribes, your views, and your comments, and I do appreciate all of those things. There's the view back to the tee from behind the basket. The fifth hole is the signature hole on this course. It requires a forced water carry over a pond. Now if you carry the entire length of the pond, it's almost 300 feet to the other side. The tee is slightly elevated, which helps your distance a little, but only a little. We just jumped across the pond and now we'll walk up to the basket. Alternatively, if you can't throw it 300 feet like I can't, you can lay up to the left. There's also this tongue of trees that sticks out in front of the basket, and therefore if you're forced to lay up to the left, that actually gives you a better angle to get around that tongue of trees. Whether you carry the pond or not, you'll definitely remember this hole. There's the view back to the tee. The 6th hole is the shortest hole so far, and also it's the first par 3, but it's definitely not the easiest hole so far. The pond you had to carry on the previous hole is now off to the right, and there's this dense woods just off to the left, and therefore this is a pretty tight fairway. The basket is located past these trees just uphill to the left, and so you're either going to have to bring the trees into play or you're going to have to bring the water into play. Given the distance of this hole and the tightness of this hole and the danger of the water, this really is a pretty hard hole. The 7th tee is located uphill to the left. It's across the parking lot and into the woods. That's the only place I had any trouble following the course route on this course. Now we head into the dense woods where we're going to stay for the next 6 holes. The back tee on the 7th hole has a cluster of trees right in front of the tee. We walked around the left side of the cluster, but I actually threw around the right side of the cluster. Going to the right gives a slightly wider line, and it also takes advantage of the steep right to left cross slope in this fairway. This hole does play somewhat uphill, and with this tightness and this length, this is another really hard par 3. This course has an interesting mix of short and relatively easy relative to par 4s, and long, fairly hard relative to par 3s. There's the view back downhill to the tee. Hole number 8 is another very tight and heavily wooded hole. It plays moderately uphill at first, but then from the height of land, it plays back downhill. It's only about 100 feet longer than the previous hole, and it's less uphill than the previous hole, but this is a par 4. Now everything on this hole is governed by the tee shot. You want to use a right to left disc flight to get as far up the fairway as possible, and ideally you'll get right up into the area we're approaching right now. This is the highest elevation on this hole. If you can get your tee shot up to here, then it's really a pretty straightforward but tight throw back downhill to get down to the basket. So a good tee shot will set up a birdie opportunity on this hole. Now if you don't have the distance to get to the area I showed you, or if you hit a tree, then you're going to struggle to make par on this hole. This is a really interesting hole, and it's probably my favorite of the heavily wooded holes. There's the view from behind the basket back to the tee. The 9th hole is of course the last hole on the front 9. It plays moderately downhill. 2 lines present themselves off of the tee. The left line looks promising at first, but it actually leads you into a pretty dense area of woods. The line we're walking is the right line, and even though it's tighter at first, that's actually the line I recommend. Once you get through the initial tight gap in the trees, it'll get you further down the hill, and it really opens up when you get further down the hill. So the right line offers greater risk, but also a much greater reward. You have to decide how much risk you want to take and then pick a line and execute a throw on this hole. This is a really clever and thought-producing hole. We're coming down to the basket. The parking lot is across the park road behind the basket, if you only wanted to play 9 holes. There's the view back uphill to the tee. That is the end of the front 9. I will see you on the back 9. Until then, have a great afternoon, take care, and Lord bless.